There are many mysterious personalities in the world of forensic science, but among them there is one whose story is both fascinating and alarming. This is Rudolf Pleil, a serial killer from Germany, whose activities left a deep mark in the history of criminology and in the minds of people. Rudolf Pleil was born in a small town in southern Germany into a family that had a reputation for prosperity and tradition. His childhood was quite calm, but already at a young age Rudolf began to show signs of unique mental development. After finishing school, he entered the university, where he studied psychology. However, his interest in human emotions and behavior was not the same as that of ordinary students. Already in his student years, Pleil began to show signs of narcissism and sociopathy. He was charismatic, intelligent, but often used his charm to manipulate people. After graduating from university, he began working as a psychologist, but at the same time continued to live a double life, which soon led to terrible consequences. Pleil's first murder happened in 1990. His victim was a young woman who, like many others, fell under his magnetic attraction. Rudolf met her in a bar, lured her to dinner, and then, when she was defenseless, killed her. This was not the end of his brutal career. On the contrary, the murder gave him confidence. In the following years, Rudolf Pleil continued to kill. His victims were women of all ages. He developed his own mechanism for selecting victims. They had to be alone, without support from friends or relatives. Pleil became a real expert in seducing and manipulating women. It is important to note that Pleil did not just kill, he paid great attention to the moment of psychological terror. On the eve of the murder, he often observed his victims, studied their behavior in order to understand their weaknesses. This allowed him to kill more efficiently, avoiding mistakes that might attract the attention of the police. All in all, he was a killer who knew himself and his limits well, and was able to hide perfectly in society. He created an ideal facade for himself, a socially acceptable citizen, a good friend, a sensitive interlocutor. His brutality went unnoticed for a long time because he was able to disguise his intentions. It is worth mentioning that over the years, the police investigated a series of disappearances of women, but Pleil managed to avoid punishment. This continued until one of his crimes turned up a bloody evidence base, traces of DNA. This became a turning point in the case. In 1999, during one of the police operations, the body of his last victim was found. Thanks to the findings, the law enforcement officers were able to find Rudolf Pleil, and his arrest became the beginning of a long and complicated legal process. In court, Rudolf behaved calmly and confidently. He tried to convince everyone that his actions were only the result of an accident, or an instinct of self-defense. However, the evidence was incontrovertible. The justice system in Germany was ruthless to the serial killer, and Rudolf Pleil was sentenced to life imprisonment. The real peak of his crimes was that he tried to use medical knowledge in his actions. Attempts to decipher or manipulate the human psyche showed his pale mind and lack of moral standards. Pleil became a symbol of how even the most educated person can hide a cruel monster. Rudolf Pleil spent more than 20 years in prison. He asked for clemency, claiming that he had undergone psychological rehabilitation. However, his requests were always rejected. His affairs have become the subject of numerous studies, documentaries, and television programs. Investigations into his crimes continue to this day, and possible lines remain open that require further analysis. The story of Rudolf Pleil leaves many questions unanswered. How did such an educated and charismatic individual become a serial killer? Was it possible to predict his violent tendencies in his youth? Did society really fail to notice the signals that radiated the suspected danger? These and many other questions justify the importance of studying the psychology of serial killers. The story of Rudolf Pleil is a warning to us all. Never underestimate what lies behind the outer shell. Killers may have the appearance of successful and attractive people, but it is in these shadows that real danger can hide. Modern society is trying to fight violence and crime, but new faces are constantly appearing, which, unfortunately, live among us. It is important to remain cautious and not lose vigilance. The story of Rudolf Pleil is a smokescreen that shows the dark side of human nature and, in turn, leaves a scar on the collective memory.